Have you ever practically walked out mid-sex? What happened? This guy kept hurting me. He had a particularly long penis and put me in a bad position. I asked him to stop 3 times and each time he would push me back into the position that hurt. So shouted, "Stop or I am punching you in the throat." And I went home. Edit. 30 years ago we were in bed naked and just about to make love and she curled into the fetal position, started crying and said, "No daddy." Muffin says no. I got dressed and we talked for a while. I recommended counseling and then I left. From what I understand she went back to Utah and got married. I hope she is well and her father rots in hell. She kept insisting that I didn't need a condom. "I'm infertile" was among her excuses. Like, I just met you on Tinder, I ain't raw dogging it. I just walked out. We didn't do anything. Yeah dude, anytime someone says we don't need a condom, that's when you know you do. My ex-GF went with me to a minor league baseball game years ago and they held a ghost pepper wings eating contest during the game. Eat the lot and survive 15 minutes without water and you're the winner. I considered myself a daredevil in the day and signed up. I won overall and got my name announced and won some gear. My ex was pretty impressed and I felt like the man. We headed home after I drank copious amounts of water and washed my mouth out. I even brushed my teeth once we were home. We were finally alone and getting hot and heavy. Thinking I'm being a generous lover, I go down on her. Suddenly she yells and runs to the bathroom. Even hours later and my mouth feeling fine. The Scovilles transferred to her nether regions and caused her a good bit of pain until she took a shower. Understandably she was no longer in the mood. Became a very funny story for us both even after splitting up and remaining friends. TL. DR. I participated in a hot wing contest and then transferred the heat to my ex-GF via oral. She had warned me at the start of our relationship. There was an incident when she was 6. No penetration but definitely traumatic. She had said that sometimes she just had to stop immediately and that I should just keep my distance if it happens. It happened only once. She said stop. I pulled out. Sat on the far end of the bed and tried to calm her down from there. I'll never forget the look in her eyes in that moment. Made a huge impression on me. My wife headbutted me when tussling around in bed. Didn't think much of it. Kept going. Switched position with me on top. She commented that I was drooling on her face. Thing is, I'm not a dog. So I wasn't drooling at all. Wiped my face with the back of my hand which came back wet. Lights on. Blood all over the place. My nose was bleeding. I had bled in her eye. Not as much a walkout since we still went to sleep together. But sex wasn't on the menu for the rest of the evening. We hadn't gotten very far. But I quickly moved down while she quickly moved up. And I broke my nose on her pelvic bone. She suddenly flipped the absolute duck out. Screaming at me about ruining our night as blood gushed out of my nose. Mind you, this was like the second date. She continued to yell at me about how I needed to fix this, a total accident, and I just cleaned myself up the best I could and went home. That was really selfish of you to get injured while going down on her. A girl I had been seeing off and on did a pretty ducking spot on Christopher Walken impression. Like. From a 5 nothing. 110 pounds woman. It was really funny and she did it so rarely that it always made me laugh. Anyway. One time we started doing it. A few minutes in. As we're getting into a good rhythm. She yells. "Oh yeah. Duck me harder." In her Walken voice, and it was so ducking funny. I laughed for way too long and we had to stop and go outside to gather myself. This wasn't the guy's fault. I was bouncing on his DCK and I accidentally bit my bottom lip really hard when I bounced. I started bleeding profusely on his chest and down my chin. We both stopped and ran to the bathroom. I didn't walk out. She bit my nipple so hard that it bled. And called me a PSSY when I complained about it. Yep. My boyfriend said he felt something hit his back, like it dropped and hit hardish and moved, so we stopped and I checked and nothing was there, so we continued. About a minute later I had my hand on my boyfriend's shoulder and I feel something move on my hand. I look and a huge house spider comes running over onto my face. I once regrettably dated a woman who was with me purely to upset her conservative parents. We were having sex in her bedroom and she began shouting as loudly as she could. I asked her to stop, but she said she wanted them to hear us. That was not my idea of fun. So I stopped. She sobbed like a child because I didn't want to take part in her weird fantasy. Edit. Don't DM me. I'm not going to try to track down a woman I dated in my late teens for some guy on the internet. I was with a guy I'd been on a few dates with, and as things were heating up, he asked if he could duck my ass. There was no lube in sight. By the way, not to mention I'd never done that and wasn't too keen on trying it with someone I wasn't in a serious relationship with, so I gave a kind but firm no. He got confused and was like, but I thought Arab girls only did anal so you don't lose your virginity and can still get married, and I was obviously like, what the duck, and then he got soft and cried a little. I drove home and he blocked my number by the time I made the 15-minute drive. Dodge a bullet there, I guess. The guy kept asking if he could remove the condom. But I'm clean. I've been tested like 2 weeks ago. You can trust me. Yeah. Right. After maybe the 6th or 7th time I got so pissed off I just up and left. Old GF. I was down under and noticed a metallic taste. It was dark but I wiped my face and my fingers were red. Well, my dumbass asked if it was that time of the month. She said no. So I scoot to the bathroom. And it looks like I'm painted for clown school. I get all cleaned up but I couldn't figure it out. Then it hit me. Nosebleed. So I go back to my room. Explain. She's crying because she didn't know what was going on. I calm her down and she goes to shower. 10/10 do not recommend. Edit. Geez, it's nice I'm not the only one this has happened to. I had an ex say her last boyfriend's name in the middle of the act. I wasn't even insulted because I knew she was a drama queen and the way she said it was so over the top. Ooh, oh my good ex's name. You are amazing. Never stop. In a way that no real life human speaks outside of movies. I wouldn't have been mad if it had been accidental. Mistakes happen. But the fact that she was doing it intentionally so she could have a dramatic scene straight out of The Notebook or some other garbage romance movie. He started to strangle me. I told him I didn't like that and he said he would stop. But his hands kept creeping up to my neck. Flipping terrified me. I wasn't sure what he would do if I stopped and tried to leave halfway through. But I sure as hell got out of there as fast as I could. Had to stop mid-sex a few times in the past due to nosebleeds. Surprisingly, blood dripping down your face isn't entirely SI. Girl just started slapping the shit out of me. Slapped me soft. Like. You can't ask me. First. I called her, told you no, and saved us some time. Yo, I was with a girl after I had a fresh breakup. She was being really vulgar about what she wanted me to with her. But kept referring to me as her father. Not like in a daddy kink kind of way. She just kept calling me Gary. And well, that was this woman's father's name. We got started and then as soon as she said it again I lost the erection and then pretended to have chest pains and went home. She then spent the next few days messaging me about. Must have been wonderful if I almost gave you a heart attack. I ended up blocking her. Edit. Grammar. Spelling. I'm lazy. He was my first Tinder hookup and kept trying to convince me that we shouldn't use a condom because he couldn't come with one on. In my Navy. I didn't leave immediately but instead listed some options that didn't involve his condom-less penis in my vagina but could still potentially allow him to come. He refused all of them and then tried to sneakily take off the condom without me noticing. That was my deal breaker, though in retrospect. It should have been much earlier, and I said, I need to leave. I calmly dressed and collected my things while he climbed under his covers and pouted. Blocked his number as soon as I was in my car. I actually did walk out. I was hooking up with this girl and she says something about her boyfriend while we are undressing each other and making out. I explain I don't need to be murdered in some cheating scenario. She explains it's her ex-BF, so we are back on going at it for a few minutes and lining up for the landing when she says I'm going to turn on my flip so I can send him a video. Instant soft and I let myself out explaining I ain't getting shot. You seem to be very focused on this whole not getting murdered thing. I was going down on a former girlfriend years ago and I was really drunk. Well, the room started spinning and to the toilet I went. Poor girl thought it was her. I reassured her it was not. I just mixed too much alcohol. He decided I wasn't really serious when I said no to an L. Newsflash, asshole. I was. I jerked away and then just got up and left. He tried calling me 4 or 5 times that night and left nasty voicemails about it. I never called him back and blocked his number. Then he sent me emails months later like nothing had ever happened. Nope. Not going there. Not only that, I've fallen asleep. Our relationship wasn't the best. And when I'd get home she would pounce on top of me. As things went downhill, so did my energy. I've been there, buddy. Had an ex who was kind of into tantra. 3-4 nights a week of 2 hours sessions when I've got to get up at like 530. It was just too much. It wasn't technically mid-sex, but I was newly single and trying to sex away my sorrows on Tinder. After swiping for a while I linked with a chick and she was very forward and wanted to get down to business, so I gave her my address to come over. She shows up with a baby. Like probably 3 to 4 months old. Then proceeds to tell me she will set the baby up on the chair in the corner of the room while we do the deed. I had a microscopic studio apartment, so she might as well have just wanted to place the baby on top of my head. Long story short, I politely declined her services and deleted Tinder. Yes. During sex my ex-boyfriend grabbed my stomach fat and said I needed to get rid of it. Edit. I realized she looked like a cousin. I couldn't keep going. There was a girl once who was very obviously trying to hook up with me. And I probably would have been down. But she just looked too much like my sister for me to even consider that. Girl dead fished it. Just lay there. She was super into doing nothing at all. It was too weird for me and I couldn't get into it. Literally said. So. Okay. Should we just stop? Neither one of us is going to get off, so I'm just gonna go. We didn't have sex again. But she continued to brag about how good she was. Yikes. Yes. My GF at the time was on top of me and I noticed a rather fresh hickey on her left breast. She had been in Florida for the 2 weeks leading up and just got home that day. Asked her what's that? And she lied horrendously, saying it was claw marks from her dog. Shaped like human teeth. Rigged. Told her to get off me. Ripped off the condom and said goodnight. Yes. Older woman who was definitely wanting a younger man. It was a fantasy of mine too. So I'm on board. Anyways. We're getting busy. She keeps trying to put me inside her without a condom. I let her know I need to put on first. But she looks visibly disappointed. We get going and I shit you not as we're getting into it and I'm getting close. I pull out to change positions. She rips the condom off me and asks me to come in her or. I quietly pulled my pants back up and left without bar word. I felt disrespected. Met a really beautiful girl at a bar. We hit it off and ended up back at my hotel. Everything was going about as great as one would hope. Started off with one of the best blowjobs I have ever experienced. Then I bent her over doggy and went in. After the first thrust, the most rancid stench just hit me. And I violently threw up all over her. After cleaning up, I slept on the couch. It scarred me. Was a one night stand with a single mom. The baby shared the room. And was sleeping in the same room. In crib. Couldn't see us. It made me super uncomfortable. But she was insistent. I was just going through the motions since the situation wasn't doing anything for me. And mid-sex she said, "Can we just stop? You're not really my type." I was so relieved that I broke out in a huge smile. Said something like, "Oh, thank God. You're not my type either. I just didn't want to be rude." Welp. Since that's not a problem anymore, I'm out. It was after a date. We went back to his place. Foreplay had gone nicely, so we were continuing on to sex and he tried going in without a condom. I stopped him and asked what he thought he was doing. He stared at me super confused and was like, "Don't you want to have sex?" I pointed out the lack of condom. He said he was fine without one. I told him it wasn't happening without a condom. He said he didn't have any laying around. I told him I had some in my purse, and if he didn't like the brand or whatever, then we could go to the store and get some he liked. He said it's killing the mood, so I told him not to worry about the mood. Got halfway dressed and left. When I was a few blocks away from his house, I finished getting dressed and went to a store. Picked up a magazine. Bought a face mask. And some stuff for a bubble bath. Turned out to be a pretty nice night when I got home. Ex-partner shat on me and was irritated that I was not in the mood anymore. I was on my back. She was on top. Her cat took a shitty on the pillow next to my head. We laughed but couldn't get back into the mood. Went to have sex with a guy I had been seeing for a few weeks. He refused to wear a condom and had weeping lumps on his junk. No ducking way. I had just come out of the closet a few weeks beforehand. Met a guy at a bar. Was sorta nervous when he invited me back to his, but thought I'd go with it. It was one of my first sexual experiences with a guy. When we get down and dirty and he whips it out and tells me to go down on him. I'm still super nervous but excited and start sucking DCK like I was born for it. Dude gets his phone out and starts playing Ducking Candy Crush. I took his DCK out of my mouth. Just silently dressed while he shouted questions at me. And left. Finally met a guy I'd worked with for years. Phone based, and we flirted continuously since we'd met. Went back to his. Had the most mind blowing, desperate sex I've ever had. Just as we came to the grand finale, his kids walked in. He forgot to tell me he had them this weekend. We most likely woke them up. We probably woke everyone within a 5-mile radius. I won't lie. He went to put them back to bed and I got dressed and left. It freaked me out to think that they may have seen us. Yup. With my wife. While she was on top. I tried to sneak out a fart and instead shitty the bed. Literally. There was no way to wrap it up and then rush her out so I could discreetly clean up. So I just said, "Babe, wait. My stomach hurts." She laughed and said, "Oh, is that what that was? I'll get you a towel." Love that woman. I actually did walk out. It was the first guy I had sex with, or tried anyway, when I was like 17. Apparently he had erectile dysfunction. But he just kept blaming me for it and yelling at me. So I noped out of that one. When I was a teenager, a girl and I parked on a back road and she climbed in the back seat and got undressed. I got out of the driver's seat and opened the back door to the car, and as soon as I did I could smell her. It was extremely unpleasant. There was just no way I was going there. So I said, "I think I see a car. Someone is coming." And I got back in the front seat. Put her in drive and took her home. A threesome situation. Many years ago. I'm a hetero male. And it turns out I just don't care for having other dudes in the room. Too distracting. It's not an old-fashioned thing. I just prefer a one-to-one focus. Too distracted I couldn't relax enough to perform. I did walk out mid-sex after he asked, "What can I do to make you come?" And I replied, "Eat me out," and he refused because he quote didn't do that because he was afraid of catching stees, but not so afraid that he served his DCK into my mouth. I didn't walk out. But I was carried out. On a stretcher. By paramedics. Backstory for anyone interested. I have severe endometriosis, so sex can be agonizing at times. I felt a flare coming on but stupidly decided having sex would be okay. It was all going well until I suddenly felt a tearing popping sensation on my left side. The pain followed about 2 seconds later, at which point I screamed, then lost consciousness. Apparently I started to choke on my own vomit, so my partner called an ambulance. I was taken to the hospital, where I was informed that I'd had a cyst that had ruptured. It would have burst eventually. The SX just hurried things along. The doctor thought it was funny. So that's the story of the time my sexual activity was interrupted by a medical emergency. This happened to me. Girl started crying during, then left. Zero explanation. Obviously left me feeling pretty shitty, like a rapist or something, even though she had initiated the SX. My friend managed to cheer me up though. I was telling him about it on the phone and he replied with, "Well, to be fair, mate. My now ex-boyfriend had put some chicken nuggets in the oven while I was napping. He came upstairs to wake me up. We started making out. One thing led to another. The timer for the nuggets goes off. I was almost there. This bitch just pulls right out and gets dressed to get the nuggets out. Left me very horny and frustrated for the rest of the day. A funny situation, but you bet I teased the hell out of him later that night." Edit. I can't decide if I hate or love how much attention this got. Thanks for my first awards. Edit 2. My roommate was mad I didn't add that this was not the first time I have been left for chicken. A different guy I once has relations with finished. Got dressed and said he was going to get a chicken sandwich. I'm still in bed, bewildered. And he asks if I want one. I did not want one. Me and a girl were making out in a high school bathroom. Yes, I know. Shut up. And she gets on her knees and pulls my pants down. And then starts giving me a blowjob by sticking it in her mouth and doing nothing. She just kept it in there. No head movement. No sucking. Nothing. She was probably going so fast that it looked like she wasn't moving.